Alrighty, we're going to get started. To honor your time, you showed up on time. So I want to welcome you all. My name is Matt Stahl, I'm the Executive Director of Compass, and you're here to see a presentation on keeping Utah moving, Utah's path to a road usage charge program with Daryl Ballantyne of the Utah Department of Transportation. The fuel tax was designed to be a user-paid means of funding the transportation system, but as vehicles become increasingly fuel efficient, the system is failing to keep up with funding needs. To help address this challenge, in 2020, Utah implemented a road usage charge program to help offset the state's declining transportation funding. In Utah's program, drivers of alternative fuel vehicles, such as electric vehicles, have the option to pay a mileage-based road usage charge in lieu of an additional alternative fuel vehicle fee. Today's Utah Road Usage Charge Program Manager Daryl Ballantyne will share the backstory of why Utah chose to pursue a road usage charge program, its successes and its challenges, and what it looks like today. For Daryl's bio, Daryl Ballantyne is a 24-year veteran of the Utah Department of Transportation and currently serves as the Road Usage Charge Program Manager, a position he has held for 3 years. He enjoys using his skills to contribute and have a front row seat to the growing development of a statewide funding. Daryl is a graduate of Weber State University in Ogden, Utah, with a master's degree in accounting. You can find Daryl's full bio on the table by the door. Some housekeeping items: soft drinks and refreshments are in the back by the door. Restrooms are out the back to the right and on your right. If you did not sign in, please do so before you leave. Sign-in forms are on the table by the door. Evaluation forms are on your tables. Please fill one out, leave it in the basket on the table by the door. We will keep taping tonight's presentation and share it later on Compass's YouTube channel. We'll also share Daryl's slides on Compass's website. Watch for emails and the Compass website for information on future presentations. And let's avoid the awkward moment in hearing your ringtone. So please silence your cell phones and join me in welcoming Daryl Ballantyne.
Thank you. Thank you, I appreciate that. I'll be behind here most of the time just because I have some notes and I'll refer to the notes that I've taken for the presentation. But I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you tonight and tomorrow and to talk about our story. Tonight, hopefully, I'll really help you understand the why we have a road usage charge program, and also let you know where we're at right now operationally and where we're going in the future with our program. So, again, I've been with UDOT, I said, 24 years. I'm fairly new in this space, and this space overall is fairly new. Right now, there are 4 states that have operating programs, and we were just one of 4 states. So we're still fairly new in this space, and I'm new in this space, so we're just kind of learning together. If you have any questions, as I go through the presentation, I'd rather just talk about it as we go along, make this even more of an informal discussion, if you will. So if you see a slide, you have a question, raise your hand, and we'll get to that question. If I don't know the answer, I'll certainly take notes and get back to Amy with the answer, and she can get that to you. So no questions are off limits. Anything you want to ask me, but I'll get going through the presentation right now. Just a little bit about the state of Utah, which most of you know since we're neighbors. 3.45 million. I moved to Idaho. Idaho looks like just over 2 million population. We have 3 million registered vehicles, which is an interesting number to me to have almost a vehicle per population when you consider that half the population is under 18, can't drive. 85,000 square miles. We're home to 5 national parks. Helps me out because I'm an amateur photographer in my spare time, and I really like to visit national parks and take pictures of the desert Southwest. We have 15 ski resorts. I'm a big skier. I'm one of the weird guys that enjoy winter and snow and cold, but I also like the other seasons as well, so Utah fits me quite well. And then our urban area consists of a 100-mile corridor. We're the 9th most urban area in the U.S. I'll give you a little background about our UDOT funding, where we get our money, and a little bit about just our program in general. But UDOT, this is the total funding for our annual budget is $29.4 billion, and 10% of that goes to the transportation department. I don't know where Idaho sits in relation to that as far as the percentage-wise for their transportation, but we get 10% of the budget for transportation. Of that, 3 main buckets is what we use for our transportation. We have a transportation investment fund, we have a transportation fund, and then we also have a federal fund. I'll go into a little bit of detail of where money comes from for those particular funds. So the transportation investment fund, most of that comes through sales tax. Idaho does have a sales tax, right?
Yep.
Okay. So 43% of that transportation investment fund comes from the sales tax, and then we also get a little bit from general funds and motor vehicle registrations. But again, that transportation investment fund we call our TIF. That is the largest pot that we use for our funding. The transportation fund, most of this money that we get for this fund comes from gas taxes. This is important because this is a fund that when they started looking into road usage charge, they noticed that this fund is going down because of the gas tax is shrinking because of a lot of different factors that we'll get into. And then of course we get money from our federal highways, and we're appreciative of that as well. So those are the 3 main funds that we use for our transportation funding. One of the reasons we're talking about this is because of the mobility trend. Utah's a growing state, Idaho's a growing state, and we're seeing more and more miles driven. And you can see where we were in 2000, 2020, and then you can see what we're projecting in 2040. We have a lot of planners that are smarter than I am to look at the statistics and see where we're headed, and this is a trend. Just a lot of miles that we're going to keep increasing. This is another point to think about right here is that when you have that many miles that are driven, the infrastructure takes its toll. And from road maintenance to new roads, it costs a lot of money. The road maintenance alone the prices are increasing with construction, and I'll get to that in just a minute as well. When UDOT started looking into the road usage charge, they looked at the kind of the cost and the fuel efficiencies, and what they found is that the purchasing power of the fuel tax has been declining. Nationally, the fuel tax purchasing power per mile driven is almost 70% less than it was 15 years ago. 70% less than 15 years ago. So that is going to continue to trend that way, and that's why Utah decided to look into this idea of road usage charge. They actually thought about it in 2003 is when they first took a look at this. The legislator created a planning task force in which a legislator stated the clear reality that fuel taxes alone cannot support an ever burgeoning demand for transportation funding, and that the state must pursue more creative means for raising needed funds. So that support for creative means is kind of the basis for UDOT to explore and later implement an operational program. They have they kind of let that simmer for quite a few years. Like I said, they looked at it in 2003, and they let it simmer. We went to Oregon. We looked at Oregon's program because they've been doing this a lot longer than we have. But still, they didn't do much until 2015 when they did some some studies. And then 2017, they put some more funding to it. In 2018 is really when they decided to, I don't want to say get serious because they were always serious about it, but when they decided to put some money to the ground and just to kind of hit it running, they created an advisory committee. And this advisory committee was fairly all-encompassing. They included obviously members of legislation, UDOT, insurance companies, trucking association, AAA, environmental groups, quite a range of people on this advisory committee that helped form our program. They got a lot of input from a lot of different sources to try to make a program that would fit the needs of what we were trying to do, which was slow down that transportation funding. In 2019, they enacted a framework, and then 2020 is when, January 1st, 2020 is when we began our program. We were the second program after Oregon, and that began January 1st, 2020.
Daryl, what are the other two states that do these road use charges?
I said there was 4, there will be 4.
Okay.
Oregon was the first, Utah was the second, Virginia began their program 2 years ago, and actually Hawaii will begin in July of this year their road usage charge program. So Hawaii is will be the 4th state.
Thank you.
And then we had some more legislation in the last few years to help with what to do with our RUCA revenue, how we can put it back into the roads where it was intended for. I mentioned earlier on the first slide, we have just over 3 million vehicles. This was February 2024. That number will be updated on the 14th of this year is when we'll get the numbers from our tax commission for this year. But those are the numbers. Just we have over 3 million now. The chart on the right shows the growth, the year-over-year growth for electric vehicles. And for the past, since 2015, we've had almost 45%, 43% year-over-year growth for the last 9 years. So electric vehicles are the fastest growing segment of vehicles. Right now, they're a small portion. I think 4%, 96% of our vehicles are ICE vehicles, and only 4% are alternative fuel vehicles, which include electric vehicles. That blue chart is for other fuel. Most of that is CNG cars or CNG fueled.
Do you suspect, I have a friend that has a Tesla who can't drive to Salmon, Idaho and back because there's no charging north south. Do you think that Utah would have a greater electric vehicle population if more of the rural areas had charging stations? Do you think that's playing into it at all?
That's a very, very good possibility. They have worked on that quite a bit, try to build a network along the Wasatch Front, but like you say, when you get to, my supervisor is from Jerome. And so when he goes from Salt Lake to Jerome, he has to make sure he charges in Snowville, because that's the last place to get a good charge. There's also Brigham City and other places, but so he's always a little bit worried about that kind of stuff, whether they're broken down. But Utah has invested quite a bit lately, last few years, on stations.
Is it mostly like on I-15 though?
Yeah, mostly on the I-15
See,
corridor.
that's the problem that I didn't appreciate when my friend Mike was telling me that there are towns in the middle of Idaho that he can't visit.
Yeah. Yeah, man, I don't know how to say this delicately. I had a CNG vehicle 10 years ago, and driving down, if I wanted to go from Salt Lake to St. George, you could fill up in Fillmore, and I was worried that that station's gonna be broken down. I won't be able to get my natural gas, and then I'll be stuck. As it turns out, there's a little town called Kanosh right past Fillmore. My car did break down, so I had to get it towed back to Fillmore. So because of that, I've always been a little bit leery about getting an electric car, although we have looked into it. because of my position, man, it seems kind of silly that I would, but
Safer on the east side of the country
Yeah.
with the density.
Yeah.
The distances out here or make it riskier.
it is crazy. My supervisor goes to St. George, he has the same issues about the one down there, so. Yeah, I'm a little leery after having a CNG vehicle about that, but that's a good consideration to think about, when you purchase an EV. And, certainly it's why, well, Utah's not, I'll have a little slide here, that Utah's not the lowest as far as EV adoption, but, I think we're like 7%.
It just, there's the distances and the separation in the west of the Mississippi make it less comfortable, like you're talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're in Salt Lake City, no problem, Ogden, no problem, that kind of stuff. But, you know, if you're out in Cache Valley someplace or out by Bear Lake, you could be in tough times.
Yeah, that is true. I've thought about those issues. Oh, it is right here. So yeah, Utah is 7.21% market share. My analyst did a little research and he told me that Idaho market share was 3.4%.
Sounds about right.
So in 2023, that was 3.4%. Obviously, California, I mean, their government there is really pushing for EVs because there's a mandate in California to have no ICE vehicles. I think it's in 2035, might be 2036, where they're doing with new car sales that are internal combustion engines. So could be a reason why California's so high right now. But that is our trend. Seems to be going up a little bit. This next slide will show the states that have adopted programs. The green are enacted programs. The crosshairs are the states that, like we mentioned earlier, that have RUC programs. In the RUC is a term that we use out west. In the east, they call it MBUF, mileage-based user fee. So different term, same concept, pay by the miles, but those are the states that have enacted RUC programs. Utah is also one of 8 states that have enacted a EV tax for their charging stations.
What about somebody that's just driving through, that's not resident, that's, you know, part of the deterioration on the road surface, et cetera? Is there any way to capture anything from them?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. The EV charging tax is interesting. At our UDOT complex, or we call it a complex, it's our UDOT main headquarters in Salt Lake, we had a row of charging stations, long row of charging stations. And every morning they'd be filled up with taxis and Uber drivers because it was free. And it's just last July they enacted this tax where they have to pay for their electricity. We don't see as many cars there anymore. So, but yeah, just last year they enacted that tax for the charging stations. I will say, to your point though, the Utah joined with the state of Washington. They applied for a grant. They were just awarded it just recently. And that grant is looking into interoperability between states. So Washington, they've joined with Oregon. I'm not sure if Idaho is part of that yet or not. But we're part of that, and they're going to do a study for interoperability between states. The East Coast, they have also done similar studies for interoperability. Of course, eastern states are, you know, you can drive through 4 states, and the time it takes you to drive through Idaho or Utah for that matter. Any other questions regarding the EVs and the annual fees?
When you say tax on EVs, are you talking, how is that tax collected?
So there's a when they plug it in, they have to put in their credit card.
Okay, are you also charging extra for the registration of the car?
Yes, we will, yeah, we'll get into that as well.
Okay.
And I'll have a slide that shows how much they pay for registration, plus how much the average driver is paying for electricity when they charge at these stations. This is our revenue and our VMT. The pink shows the VMT, and you can see that's just like that, one of the first slides, that is continuing growing. Whereas the blue is our fuel taxes, and that is steadily declining. So there's quite a big gap there, and that gap's getting wider. But now they've introduced EV fees, or sorry, AFE fees, alternative fuel vehicle fees. And you can see that's helping to close the gap between those two, between the miles driven and the fuel taxes. And then, as you can see, the green, which is we just enacted, it's not a very big number there, but that's also helped to close the gap a little bit.
What's been the response by the population in Utah?
Population between EV owners or just
Well,
general?
people reacting to charges that they didn't see coming.
If you're an EV owner, you did see it coming because when you signed up for it, you have to actually wait a year before you can join the program. Although you still have since 2018, you have the fee. I talked to a gentleman last week who has had an EV since 2014. He was really happy until they enacted that legislation, and then he wasn't unhappy because he understood there's a need, and it's a fairness, equality issue where they're helping to pay for the roads as well. I guess so much so that he went and bought a second EV just recently. So the general public is, I think, we did a pilot, and 80% of participants in that pilot said that they can see RUC being a fair alternative to help pay for road maintenance. So 8 out of 10 people in that pilot.
That's excellent.
Does your mileage fee or alternative fee, it doesn't matter which one you're using, take into consideration the additional weight that an EV puts on the road versus a gas vehicle?
It does not. No.
Because you get additional wear as a result of it. I mean, just for instance, my pickup truck is a gas truck, 4,800 pounds. A Tesla truck is 6,800 pounds.
Yeah.
It's more, and you can play those numbers all around, but they're about half again as much as what a gas vehicle is. And I think the same thing applies on passenger cars. And so you get more wear. It's kind of like when they decided to up how much trucks could carry and how much extra wear that puts on the road, and they don't get taxed for that, but that's a different subject. Some way we gotta pay for the roads, and I think all of us have seen that the road quality is not what we wish it were.
Right. Yeah, we haven't looked at that yet. Interesting concept though. I was on a county council for 2 terms, and we actually had people come in and try to, they had studies done that showed that where I live, there's a lot of mining going on, so there's a lot of team-wheelers and all that. And so they showed us that, these trucks don't put any more wear and tear on the roads than a normal car. Not sure where they got their studies from.
I don't know. I know Washington State University does studies on that. At least they did 50 years ago when I was going there. But they still have that track there, and I think University of Idaho does too. On road wear and all that. You might want to ask them. But another thing, if you talk to any of the other countries out there that do it, for instance, Norway, 9 out of 10 new cars are EVs. And so I'll bet you they have a lot of information on EV use and all that sort of stuff, how it wears roads, etc. In a place like Norway. So.
Yeah, the European countries are just advanced far beyond what we are, I think, as far as road usage charges. Not even European, but New Zealand, they have a robust road usage charge program. I'm a little surprised that there's not more states have programs like that, but I think that gap the miles driven and the shortfall for the gas taxes is gonna continue to increase, so I think something will have to be done in those states. This is a slide that I was referring to earlier. It shows the, what it's costing for the, typical Utah driver. I consider myself just about average. My mom says I'm above average, but in reality, I'm fairly average when it comes to driving. We have a 21 mile per vehicle car. I paid almost that exact same with the federal tax and our Utah tax for the miles I drove. I drove almost exactly the average miles per year that this study shows. So, but this does show the what if you were charging 20% of the public charging, what you would pay, and then also what you charge at a 30% public charging. Knowing that a lot of people, I see most people I know actually just charge at home. So
If somebody charges their vehicle at home in their garage, they're bypassing like the meters that you're talking about, the taxis and Ubers were doing. Is that, what's the ratio of like plugging in at home?
we know it's happening, but I mean, there's still a charge at home for them, for their electrical use.
Right, but you're not catching
But
the,
we're not, no.
that seems to be a potential gap.
Yeah, big gap. Big gap, but I think it's advantageous right now for them to charge at home and not pay that tax.
Nationally, they talk about 80% of electric car owners charging at home. So only 20% of them are actually going someplace else to charge. The group that's hit the most in terms of local residency are apartment dwellers, because there's not that many charging units at apartments. So they're only getting basically 20%. And most of the charging you're getting is for people who are going long distance, because they have to find a gas station or a charging station to charge your car.
Yeah. That's probably where this number came from, for the 20% people public charging. Any other question on this slide?
So, you know, you already covered this and I missed it, but what is the point of collection? Is it, do you have a registration annually? Do you send people a bill, collect it at the pump?
For their vehicle registration?
No, for their
Money they're paying.
user cost.
You said that you actually charge at the charging station.
Yeah.
Okay.
They just they just use a credit card and pay by that charge.
But if I'm buying gas, do I pay extra at the pump?
It's part of the,
Right.
part of your price.
That price, yeah.
That nobody ever considers when they're putting in gas in their car.
Okay.
Nobody ever thinks really about how much you're paying in federal tax or gas tax. I don't know, I'm not sure what the
So
Idaho.
you're just getting a share of the gas tax?
Yes,
Okay, all right.
yeah. The federal tax is 18.4, it has not risen in a number of decades, it has not gone up. Utah indexes its fuel tax now, with CPI, but, the federal tax hasn't gone up for, man, I can't recall the last time.
1993.
93?
Yep.
Yeah, that's a long time for, East Ave right there. This is our program. So when we started in 2020, we gave consumers the option. You could pay the alternative fuel fee, or you could join the road usage charge program. Again, we don't have point of sale options yet. That's another thing that we're looking into. So the time you'd have your vehicle for a year before you could join the program. But this is a choice we gave, and this is what we let them know. If you drive less, you pay less. When we started the program, right now it just moved up to 1.11 cent per mile. When we started the program, it was 1.5 cents per mile. 1.5 cents per mile, and then 2 years ago we decreased it, just try to incentivize people to join the program. So we dropped it 1 cent per mile, and now it's indexed to inflation, and so it's back up to 1.11. That ED fee on the top is what it is this year, $143.25. That's what you pay if you don't want to join the program. It's optional. The nice thing about Utah's program right now is that it will never you'll never exceed that 143.25. So once you hit that cap, you're done paying for the year. A lot of people like the program for a few reasons. One is that they don't have to pay that 143 up front. They can spread that over 4 payments. Right now, our program is based on a quarterly statement, and so you have to pay by the quarter rather than paying that one time monthly. Also, we do have PHEVs and hybrids in the program. They are grandfathered in. We, as of last year, we discontinued enrolling them in the program just because cost savings were not there. But the people that are in the program, they can stay in the program as long as they want. And those are the fees associated with them.
What is the incentive for the state, given that if somebody enrolls, they don't ever pay more than the flat fee? So it seems like the state would be essentially losing money as compared to just charging everyone who has an EV the flat fee. Can
Yeah,
you
that's a good.
talk to that?
That's a great question. There's really not a huge incentive where we're collecting the flat fee, whether you join the program or not. There's not a lot big incentive for us to, or for somebody for Utah to have this program. In other words, you're trying to give a little bit of break for those that don't drive a lot. We get some people who say, I drive 6,000 miles a year. Well, this is a great option for you because then you're paying quite a bit less for the program. But as far as Utah, not a big benefit. Now you say we lose a little bit of money, but
Did that help with political buy-in?
it helped with public perception. Not sure about political buy-in.
At least people hated it less.
Yeah, yeah.
So just doing the math real quick, that's almost 13,000 miles is
Yep.
sort of the break point.
Yep.
Was that an intentional decision? Is that like the average? I know you said you had started with 1.5 cents, I believe, and you lowered it. Were you just trying to find where that like equilibrium was?
Yeah,
or
that
average
13,000
driver?
miles was where we looked at.
That was where you were looking,
It was a little
okay.
over 13,000 miles. Yeah, that was the average. Well, they figure the average driver in Utah drives. This is really important to our integration with our DMV. The DMV is in our tax commission, and UDOT is a separate entity of that. So we have to work with them, with our DMV, to synchronize our enrollment as far as the registration cycle and the payments. Without the DMV, it would be really tough to do this on our own. So they're a good partner with us, and at one time, I think we actually looked at asking the DMV to take over the program, and they wanted nothing to do with it at the time, so. Unless it's active in legislation, they'll stay with UDOT for a while.
So do you run the fees through the DMV whenever a person registers, or,
What's that again?
well, there's a fee on the license, and I
Yep.
assume the DMV collects that.
Yep.
And then you collect the fee on the charging stations.
Yeah, that's through the DMV.
That's
Or,
all.
no, sorry, so charging stations, not the charging stations. Just the alternative vehicle fee,
Okay, that's for the DMV also.
yes.
So they're your bookkeeper then.
Yeah, they take in a lot of money for us. Yeah.
So how do you track how much mileage is used?
We'll get into that here in a minute.
Good.
There's a few different ways that we've tracked it before, and I'll let you know how we did it before and what we're doing now. That's coming up. So this is our enrollment growth. We, the green is, light green, is our EVs. You can see the gas hybrids and the PHEVs, they leveled off and are actually declining a little bit. The red is the attrition. We've had quite a few people join the program and decided, you know what, it's not for me. Either they drive too many miles and it's just a hassle to join the program. We had a lot of, in the beginning, we exceeded our expectations by, triple. We thought we would have, Oregon's program is fairly small, less than 1,000 people. And we thought that we would have, smaller numbers than that even with our program. But we had such a great response in the beginning, just exceeded our expectations for the enrollment numbers. And again, they dropped off. I'll go into some things in a study we did recently in here in a later slide. These are our revenues and expenses. It's costing us some money to run this program. We've received grants to help run our program, to help operate the program. We received 2 different grants just to help start the program. And but these are our costs. You can see though in FY25 we have a new vendor, and that our costs are considerably lower to operate the program, and we're getting close to that break-even mark. We actually think with our enrollment numbers in FY26 or FY27, we could break even. Our goal is never to make money, and I see that if we start making money, then they'll probably just decrease the charge. But our goal is not to make money, but it is costing us some money and the taxpayers some money, so we want to be cognizant of that. Again, this is the program. We call it RUC 1.0, and then our current program we're calling RUC 2.0 because we're not that original, I guess. Can't find a different name for it. But our 1.0 program, the big change that we moved from is we had the OBD2 plug-in ports, and you've probably seen those in your car. A lot of insurance companies use those now to plug into the port. We had that, and that was costing us a lot of money. Not only was it costing us a lot of money per month, but when somebody damaged or broke that device, it was costly to UDOT to replace that device. Plus there were privacy. One of the biggest concerns in our program at the beginning was privacy. Not as much anymore, but beginning with OBD2 port, that was a big concern, was privacy. They could track where you're going. UDOT never received that information. Our third-party vendor, they could collect it, but they never shared that with us. It was always aggregated, and we never saw that information. We don't have that anymore, thank goodness, because now we're saving a lot of money with the odometer capture. Not only are we saving a lot of money, the privacy concerns with odometers drop considerably. There's not a lot of privacy concerns when they just send in an odometer. The one thing, the bad thing that did happen is we went from a little higher tech to now it's just low tech. Unless you have a telematic, which people can opt in when they join the program, you can opt in as a telematic user or odometer. Right now it's about 50-50 with telematics, and that's an option. Most vehicles, when we join the program, have a telematic option that you can subscribe to. Tesla's is free, I believe, but most vehicles have a telematics option you can either subscribe to or have it on your vehicle. So,
does telematics get over the issue that was mentioned earlier if you drive to a different state?
you can use that for telematics, yes.
Okay.
And we did studies when we had an OBD2 device. We could determine that 6% of our miles driven in a year were out of state. So with the OBD2 device, we could determine that. Now we don't know, other than we could get it from telematics, but we don't ask for that information. But we could, that's one option. But that'll be, I think that'll be one thing we look at when we join this study with Washington, and interoperability is using telematics to capture that kind of data. But right now, you just pay by the miles, no matter where you drive. Again, I mentioned our contract. We just began a contract with ETAN. Our contract before was with a company called Imovis. Not sure if you've heard of Imovis. It's a French-based company. They've been doing this a long time, but they were expensive. We in addition to the odometer capture and the monthly reporting, or sorry, the plug-in device and the monthly, now we're going quarterly reporting and just odometer capture via your smartphone. So we're saving a lot of money in our program going this route. We just started in May of this year. We've hit some speed bumps. We're still not fully transitioned to our the new program. those, we're barely now sending out statements for the first time. That's taken that long to just kind of get up and running with them. E10 is a company based out of Dallas. That they are our current vendor. One thing about vendors, I will add, the Utah's looked at going to the Oregon model, which is having multiple vendors. Much like you would your cell phone provider, you can have different options. Oregon has, they had 3, one just dropped out. One of their vendors just dropped out, so I believe they have 2, or maybe they have 4 and they have 3 now, but they have multiple vendors that you can choose from when you join their program. Utah, when we get done with this contract in 5 years, I think we'll look at that model as well a little closer and try to give consumers even, another option. I don't know if the cost will be different, but at least you might have an option like you would your cell phone device. This is our timeline, our flat fee and our timeline. It's kind of hard to see those rates here, but it does chart. It shows you where we started at, where we're at right now, and where we're headed in the future with our program. And again, it's based on the CPI adjustments. We're sitting here at 3% increases with the CPI. By 2032, EV fees are jumping up to $314. Go ahead.
So the values in these charts is based on what Utah thinks they're gonna need to fund the road stuff. It's not a competitive thing saying New Mexico is this, Virginia, Montana. It's based on, it's a function of what UDOT thinks they need to maintain the roads.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and the EV fees across the states are just very widely. I mean, there's a few states that are as low as $50 a year. Other states are $250 a year for their EV fees. And there's quite a range of EV fees, and I'm not sure all the reasons why they're that way, but to your point, it's just what we think we need to maintain our roads.
You may have covered this, but for out-of-state drivers, has there been talk about a way to capture EVs that spend a lot of time in the state?
Not yet, no. That would be one thing we look at when we do our study with our interoperability with Washington, but right now we don't have any way to track out-of-state miles. Sorry, the telematics there is a way, but we don't track those.
In theory, you could have interstate compacts, I guess, some year from now.
Yeah, I think the mileage-based user fee alliance in New Jersey, I think they look at that a little closer than we do, but right now we don't.
Did Utah look at like the Illinois model where they have toll roads to compare, like income streams, ease of stuff? I go to Illinois usually each summer, and I make sure I avoid the toll roads. I don't need them myself. And I know that people there have those, I think what you were talking about, the telematics in their windshield, so when they just slide by
Like a transponder.
That's it, thank you. Did Utah compare the revenue angle on those? Because nobody in the West does it. It's Illinois is the first one that I can think of driving east.
That's one of the challenges we have now. Utah has one road that's
Oh yeah, that's right.
dedicated
Near Ogden.
Actually goes from Ogden to, now goes past Provo, and express lanes.
It's like 91, something like that?
It's on I-15.
Oh, okay.
It's on I-15, but it's
The HOV lane.
yeah, HOV lane. So that's a dedicated lane. That's one of the issues people think that's where they think they're being double taxed, which I guess, they are being charged for the lane, in addition to paying for, the registration fee.
But they're being charged here as well.
Yeah.
But that would accommodate, the toll road seems to be an obvious kind of thing, but above and beyond the staffing problem, is the fact that like every vehicle that goes through is going to pay for the road usage, whereas this is hit and miss.
Right. And UDOT's looking at studies, actually they just got a grant to look into license plate readers for their express lanes. Because there's quite a bit of
they work really well. I got caught, I didn't know that that left lane was a premium.
Oh, good, they'll be.
Not in Utah,
Well, cause
Bay
right,
Area.
right now, there's a lot of people using the lane that don't have a sticker or a transponder, so, yeah. Any other questions?
I got a quick one.
Yeah.
Maybe you're getting to it later. On your side, it looks like this year the road usage charge is expanded to all vehicle types. Is there some form of incentive for gas vehicle users? Cause if they're already paying at the pump and then paying additional, like why would they willingly sign up for that?
Yeah, that's, okay, I was gonna get to that, so back in 2020, the legislature created a 10-year plan, it's actually 12-year plan, and what their wish is that all light-duty vehicles in the road usage charge program by 2032. Now, we're not gonna be there, but that's, kind of the roadmap they set 3 years ago. And what it would be is you would have in lieu of paying the fuel taxes, you would pay by the mile still. So we're not there, we can barely, obviously our program is really small. We have, I think, 11% EVs in the program, which is a fairly small number. So the legislature looked at mandating all EVs in the program. But we're not there yet.
Okay.
And hopefully we'll get there before we retire.
These things take time.
Yeah. In Hawaii, like I mentioned, they're gonna start a program this year. And in 2028, all EVs are mandated to be in the road usage charge program in Hawaii. So they will be the first state to have a mandate that all EVs join the program. And we'll watch Hawaii closely, see how that works, how they run their program being mandated. But that's one thing our legislature has talked about.
Being a literal island, do you know, have they talked about mandating it for all vehicles as well?
Not yet, just EVs.
Just start there,
Yeah.
figure it out, okay.
Yeah. Hawaii's lucky, I think. How they run their program, they don't have to worry about out-of-state drivers, right?
Yeah, it's one complicating factor that they certainly get to
Yeah,
avoid.
yeah. Any other questions on our timeline?
On 2024, it looks totally different than the others. Did the EV fee go away?
No, that was just, 2024 just showed that we activated our EV charging tax.
As an add-on,
Yeah.
okay. Thanks.
So in fact, your EVs are being charged twice. Once for license, additional license fee, and then secondly, charging at the charging station.
Right. Yeah, that's where we came,
Kinda look at it as.
this slide here.
You pay for it at home. If you go to get charged somewhere else, you're paying for the electricity that's coming through there.
Yeah.
It's just kind of the way I look at it.
Yeah, you are getting charged, that's one of the issues we've had, but, like was mentioned earlier, I think 80% of people charge at home, so right now it's not a big issue, but it's one way to avoid that tax. You're paying a little bit more at home, most likely, for electricity, so. These are our challenges that we're looking at. We wanna continue to do some cost reductions. The pilot that we just completed last year, we looked at integrating our RUC program with our tolling program. Again, we only have that one express lanes in Utah, but it covers about 80 miles now is our tolling program. But we looked at integrating that program. Ironically enough, ETAN is the vendor for our tolling program already. So when we did this study, we looked at how can we combine those two programs to make it even more cost efficient for a department, for taxpayers. Point of sale is one thing we are looking at because, again, we're losing a year when they buy their vehicle. The auto dealers, and Oregon's doing a stage right now with their point of sale. They're, the auto dealers are kind of pushing back against that idea. I don't know if it's just one more thing they don't wanna manage or take care of, but that's one thing. The privacy protection, that'll always be a concern when you have telematics, not so much with odometer, but as long as you have a telematics in your car, yeah, your phone. I mean, Tesla right now, they could, I think they have 400 points of contact they can track in their telematics. And so it's, I mean, anybody who has a phone knows what it's like to be tracked a little bit. Maturation of the vendor community, this is interesting because, I mentioned Oregon lost one of their vendors. I don't know if it's because it's tough, interesting space to get into, but there's not a lot of vendors right now that will that want to take this on. So hopefully in the future there'll be more vendors. Even in Oregon, one of their vendors was, I believe, AT&T, just because they could handle the billing cycle okay. But as far as just a road usage charge collection, not a lot of vendors out there. So we're hoping to see more in the future that we can make that optional for people to join with more than one option. I wrote there, taking a program from optional to mandatory. That has been looked at in our legislature, not very favorably, but it has been looked at as one of the options in the coming years, much like Hawaii's doing. I'll give you some.
A similar question that I asked before, what would be the advantage of taking it from optional to mandatory? It seems like you would have less public acceptance, but the more enrollees that are not driving as many miles, it seems like your revenue would decrease, but yet your expenses would continue to increase.
Yeah, that is one of our challenges, is making it mandatory. And I think that's one of the reasons they opted not to make it mandatory yet, is because the value's just not there yet. And I think one of the reasons they want to make it mandatory is just that they want to make it uniform for all the EV drivers. Even though some drivers pay a lot less because they drive a lot less.
Is there a thought of ever flipping it on its head and having the flat fee be the floor, and people that drive a lot pay more than currently people that don't drive a lot pay less?
No, but they have, well, I'm not sure about that. I do know they've talked about eliminating the cap, which would be a really bad public relations nightmare. Hopefully I don't do that before I retire. Yeah, they've looked at doing away with the cap. I know that's one thing they looked at. Okay, so we did a study just recently. We've done a few studies, but we did one recently that talked about, we wanted to find, because I showed a chart earlier that showed the attrition. There's a lot of people leaving the program. Although we are having almost 200 people a month join the program right now, there's still quite a few people leaving the program. So what we found out was that the benefits for participating in the program, the first was this cost savings for those that didn't drive as many miles, did drive 13,000 miles, they had benefits of that. The flexible installment payment options, the quarterly payment, that was also a motivation to participate because you're only paying quarterly. The transparency and security and data handling and vendor selection was also a motivator to participate. Now, the barriers to participation, we learned quite a bit about this, is one, was the cost savings. Quite a few drivers, once they reach that 13,000 mile, or $143, last year was $138. Once they reach that, you don't pay any more. So there was no cost savings, and it was just costing them, time to either enter their data or to be in the program, and so that was minimal. Inconvenience, privacy is still concerned with telematics and data sharing. They had vendor trust issues with our last vendor. I don't know all the reasons they had doubts about our last vendor, but that was one of the vendor trust was a barrier to participation. And then just technical issues, challenges with the website login process, although I think we've simplified it. If you went to our website, it's a fairly simple registration to join our program, a lot easier than it was anyway. So these are what we found out from those that are in the program, those that have left the program, and we also reached out to people that have never joined the program and to ask them why they are or are not in the program. And we just did that focus group. We just finished that in November of this year. So good information from that. It's a 44-page report, so I just kind of gave you a little summary of what that report was about. That's all I have on the presentation. What other questions do you have?
Just very broadly, I know you mentioned the focus groups, but do Utah residents generally know about the program? And is it fairly broadly advertised? Is it something that's commonly people are aware of, whether they're participating or not?
Yeah, they did, when we started the program in 2019, for instance, they sent out flyers to those registered with the DMV, with an EV. And now the DMV, when you go to register your car, you'll get a pop-up saying that your car is eligible to join the program, and it'll give you some options, what it costs to join the program. If you drive this many miles, what it would cost you. So right now, the only way they're getting notified is when they go to register their vehicle. They'll get that pop-up option.
Any of your public facing things go, or else? I mean, seriously, I mean, it's like, folks, the roads need repair or maintenance. We have to come up with this much money so that you can drive your vehicle and your family can come visit you. Which way you wanna pay for it?
Yeah, luckily, like I mentioned earlier, we have 80% of people thought that the RUC is a fair program and a fair way to collect dollars to help maintain the roads that normally would be paid through the fuel taxes. So, I mean, there's still obviously a few, 2 out of 10 have issues with it, but I think 80% right now is a fairly good number to start with.
So is that in part because, like you mentioned earlier, the program's not profitable right now, nor is the intent at the moment for it to be profitable. But what is, so like, to me that would make sense if people like you get the flat rate or you can just save money by registering in this program. Yeah, of course I'm gonna like the program that has the potential to save you money. But ultimately the end game, if it is for the state to increase revenue to help maintain for its roadways, it would have to expand beyond electric vehicles and start to become profitable. Is the state using this as a way to learn more, or maybe try to sway public opinion either locally or nationally to get away of like a state gas tax or something of the sort? Is just, I guess, sort of like, what is the end game? Because it can't not be profitable, otherwise why not just take the money you're using and throw that into the roads?
The end game is to have all light duty vehicles in the RUC program.
Okay. And is the thought they would all have sort of the same option? You either get like the annual registration fee or you can do per mileage.
Right.
And go from there?
Yeah, unless it's mandatory, that's the option they would have.
Okay.
One of those two.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is the end game, is to have all light duty vehicles in a RUC program.
Would that be on top of the state gas tax or in lieu of?
In lieu of.
Okay.
In lieu of the state gas tax. Yeah, which right now is like 34 and a half cents per gallon is the state gas tax. Again, a number that most people don't even realize when they fill their tank up. They just don't even think about the federal or the gas or state gas tax. But that's what keeps our roads maintained right now.
So I guess following on that, I don't know if there'd be any technologically feasible way to do this. But thinking about out-of-state drivers that drive on your roads, in theory, you could have a really steep gas tax and a really steep charging tax. And then if you're in the RUC program, paying per mile to the state as a resident, or maybe as maybe even as a non-resident, but you're paying per mile, then you get either a discount or no charging fee or gas fee. That would be the idea. So you pay a really steep per charge or per gas fee, and then this RUC allows you to not have to pay that really steep fee, that tax.
I'd rather be, a little more friendly with my neighbors in Idaho and not charge them a higher fee. But yeah, I don't know where we're going with that.
Well, what I mean is,
Yeah.
if, in other words, if you're out of state, we have no way to get jurisdiction over you to charge you a per mile fee.
Yeah.
If you want to enroll in the RUC program, you can, and we'll charge you for your Utah.
Yeah.
But if you don't, then we're gonna charge you a really high price at the pump and at the,
Unless we enact some kind of legislation that we can pull that from telematics, and we can get that right now. But yeah, we have we have a lot of national parks in southern Utah, and we get a lot of people coming from Vegas and Arizona to the national park, so we get a lot of out-of-state drivers.
yeah, and right now we capture that because they fill up at a gas station.
Yeah, right, yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So, that'll be one thing to look at, I think, in the future.
So you're talking about this being for light duty vehicles, aren't talking about it for heavy duty vehicles.
They haven't looked at heavy-duty vehicles yet. I mean, if semis are taxed like,
There's a road tax, they gotta fill out forms.
yeah, it's, I saw that whether taxed, and I thought, holy cow, man, this is one thing we don't wanna add on right now.
Yeah, I'm not saying we want to add on their
Yeah.
system, but you can, okay, so that's why you have a divide between the two.
Yeah, we don't have anything for heavy-duty yet, just all light-duty.
But I guess in theory, if you perfect the RUC program, maybe it takes the place of the very onerous
Yes.
heavy duty.
It could, yeah. Amy?
Question kind of tagging on what Austin asked earlier about the end game. I guess two questions with that. One, is that something that's actively being talked about right now, like in the legislature, of moving to replacing the gas tax? And also, if you kept it at that, a cap, would then the gas tax be replaced with essentially a higher flat registration fee like it is right now for the EVs, or would there not be a cap and it'd just be straight mileage, or have those conversations happened yet?
Yeah, to your first question, that has been talked about because they did authorize a study. I don't know if you know, anybody know Jacob Engineering? Is that Idaho group?
Yeah.
Jacob Engineering did a study for us, and they looked at a 10-year plan that would implement all vehicles. And so, yes, to your first question, we have looked at that, and that's one of the things they've looked at is that study. As far as your second question, I'm not sure yet. They're still looking at different factors, variables into that. That study, I can share with you that study, if you're interested in seeing that,
That would be great.
the Jacob study. We call it the Jacob study, but there's a bill attached to it, but I can certainly share that with you. In fact, let me write that down so I can make note of it.
In Idaho, ironically, Idaho Nuclear Lab did a study as to what the cost was per mile operating a vehicle. And because we weren't paying gas tax, the add-on to our registration was added on to it. Unfortunately, the state legislature did add-on plus. INEL said this is the amount that we recommend, and state legislature will add another $50. So that's where we're at right now in Idaho. And the other challenge with the add-on fee is, if the cost of maintaining our roads increases, a license plate fee, unless you're going to increase that based on that cost, is a real challenge, because limiting kind of a legislative issue when you raise the registration for a car.
You have another add-on to that too, and that's population growth. we know for X number of new families that move in, we've got these needs to meet, transportation wise.
Yeah.
How many roads, you know, what do we need for our roads, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So all of that's gotta be factored in at some point.
Again,
I think we're doing a
Europe's
good
got us
job
beat
now.
with mass transit ideas. I mean, that's,
That mass transit will never fly in the western US. It will never fly.
it's a tough sell in Utah, even with their,
We just have too many distances to travel.
yeah.
You can get by, I mean, when I lived in Germany and all that, you can get by on that's fine. You know, but it's compressed and, transportation set up for that. You know, I can remember talking to people about, well, okay, when I ship my stuff back, I'll fly into New York, but my vehicle gets into DC, or vice versa.
Yeah.
And say, well, that's not very far, it's just this much on the map. I said, let me just put it in Germany terms. It's like going from Hanover to Berlin. Oh. So, I mean, that's, you know, we have longer distances to
Yeah.
travel.
I mean,
And even commuting, people commute longer distances. You know, I know there's a move to move everything into the city and, you know, 15-minute city, all that sort of stuff. It's never gonna fly.
right.
And I would suggest that any politicians who get serious about pushing that will be out of office as soon as people discover what that is.
Well, I live in a rural community and
Yep.
mass transit's not an option right now for us. My mother-in-law is German, she's born in Berlin. And,
What's the segment?
I hear stories all the time about their transportation, how,
When you talk about mass transportation, statewide, I've been here since '75. I've watched Union Pacific literally disown 90% of their track in the state. When I got in '75, the ski community here in Boise was looking at running a train from Boise up to McCall. And before we could get anywhere, Union Pacific had closed down various parts of that track. I was working near the Capitol building when they took out the last trolley line that actually went from the Capitol over to Caldwell.
But you understand why the railroads do that, and that's because they get taxed for that as property tax. You know, in just to kind of give you an idea, in the state of New York, the number 2 property tax payer is railroads.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
So, you know, they gotta lessen their property tax, that's why they get rid of it. That's why they go from 2 tracks to 1 track, because that's less they gotta pay in property tax. It's all that in. And so, you kinda get what you're willing to pay for, and what we've done is we've said, well, we're gonna build these great roads, we're not gonna tax the truckers as much as it actually costs them to do the on there. Instead, the automobile payers are gonna pay for the maintaining of the roads. And I mean, we go through that whole thing. I've gone through that. But that's the reason why, you know, in 1920, I think we reached the peak railroads in this country. And since that time, we've slowly gone down, and that's why. It's because we don't pay property tax on the roads that we use. We do, and we pay tax to the state, we pay gas tax and all that, but railroads are paying both.
One of the issues that I've seen raised with RUC charges is concerns over compliance, that instead of like the gas tax where the distributors are paying the tax, that you have all those different individuals paying, and that there could be places where people are finding loopholes essentially to get out of it. I realize your program is voluntary, and so people are there because they want to be there, but have you looked into that at all, or have seen anything that deals with that issue, either aware of it happening or safeguards in place to guard against that?
just compliance issues?
Yeah, with it being easier for someone to find a loophole than the gas tax where you can't really not pay it because it's just built in.
We haven't spent a lot of time or effort on compliance, mostly because it is a voluntary program and because of the reporting, how we're receiving the reporting. It's not like our express lane where you can just jump in and out of that express lane and not have to worry about paying a charge. Well, some
Some people get it.
My son got busted as well in the express lane without a tag. But he got an accident, that's why he got charged. But no, we don't have anything as far as compliance. Not too concerned about it yet. Maybe when we go into a mandatory program, if we do, it'll be something we talk about more. But other than somebody rolling back their miles on their vehicle, I don't think there's not a lot of concerns for us right now.
I guess a related question, which might be picking up on part of what you're saying, the gas tax, in my opinion, is kind of a perfect tax because you have no choice but to pay for it at the time that you need it.
Yeah.
So, you know, imagine if you had a system where the gas tax was, you tracked it and at year end you got a big bill. You'd have a lot less than 100% of people paying their share. You'd have a lot of debt collection issues.
Yes.
Has there been you know, what thoughts have you had on the RUC program? I know right now it's a quarterly billing, you said, which is better than annual, better than doing it at the registration, which is part of the appeal of participating in the RUC program, as I understand it. Has there been thoughts about how to make that even more painless for the consumer to feel like because right now I don't like paying for gas, but it's just a fact of life. I fill my tank and I drive until it runs out and I fill my tank again. I'm not an EV owner yet. Is there a way to make that tax less painful?
Yeah, we've said a number of years now, and my thought, and most people's thought, is that the gas tax is a great way to collect taxes. Because you don't think about it, you fill your car up as part of the charge. UDOT gets money from, you know, the tax commission, and it's just like a perfect system. Why in the world are we messing with that perfect system, you know?
EVs.
But the reality is EVs and the fuel efficient vehicles are forcing our hand a little bit. We would love to stay with the system we had, but it's just not working. It's not sustainable. And it's not generating anything. So, and as far as making it easier, I think the only thing we could do is maybe even drop the price like we did one time to make it even more affordable. But even when we did that, I mean, we're still losing money, so we're not recouping what it's costing us in the program. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure how to answer that exactly, other than we need to do something, and this is our option right now.
I mean, in theory, I guess if you went to a monthly bill, then drivers would get more immediate feedback of, oh, I drove a lot this month and now I get a bigger bill.
Yeah, we had a bigger, if you come tomorrow, I'll go into a little more detail about our current program. But in short, our last vendor, and it's the same slideshow tomorrow, but it's more detail about our current program. But our last vendor was a monthly billing. And it was a billing where they had a prepaid wallet set up. And that prepaid wallet, once it got to a certain threshold, was just replenished with their credit card. And so they didn't have to do a lot, other than they had to set up their account. But after they had their account set up, they didn't really have to do a lot on a monthly basis.
And was a credit card mandatory?
It is mandatory, yes.
So you didn't have to worry about debt collection?
It's mandatory, but the one issue we're having now is when people join the program and then their credit card expires or they don't, re-up it, then we've got to go after them. And that's a lot of work on our customer service team with our new vendor who has to call these people, send emails. We have almost 1,500 people who, when they transitioned to the new program, they didn't have the right credit card information. And so we're still, this is since May, we're still going after these people trying to get their credit cards updated. And so that's an issue we're having right now. One of the bigger issues we're having is just trying to get people their credit cards updated because they're in the program.
And of course, the gas tax you can pay with cash or whatever.
So what we've, we don't want to do this, but one of the options we do have is we can put a hold on the registration. So when they go register next year, they're gonna be told, hey, you joined the RUT program, but you didn't pay anything because your credit card was like not handled right. So you need to clear that up before we can register your car again. It's a public relations nightmare, to be honest with you, but it's one of the only enforcements we have right now is put a hold on registration.
So have you run the math the other way? If it was mandatory, how would the price drop?
We have not yet. We haven't run that math. We're actually looking forward to Hawaii's program, seeing what's gonna happen with their.
It seems like it would be quite a shift then.
I would think so, yeah. And if people's mileage, if their driving habits stay the same, I don't know, there's a lot of different factors they have to look into.
Hawaii is so compact compared to Utah.
Yeah. Love Hawaii.
But Utah hasn't had any volcanic eruptions recently.
You can't travel long distances in Hawaii. I mean, you just can't.
Like this.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can drive around, for instance, the entire island of Oahu.
Have a small earthquake scare.
Drive from here to Twin Falls.
Yeah,
You know?
big islands, so you can get.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm just always wondering what's the best way to impose a tax that.
Very delicately.
You gotta extract money from the
Yeah.
population, right?
Yeah.
But how can you do that in as painless a way as possible, so you don't make the tax any more expensive in terms of time and effort
Yeah.
and
Because
brain
what we're
damage?
doing now is we're going after saying, you know, you owe this tax, this road usage charge, where when they were paying fuel taxes, they didn't notice it at all. That's why it was a perfect setup.
Yeah, you never had to ask for the money,
Yeah,
it was
never.
baked in.
So this is it's a challenge.
Could you add on, like, for EVs specifically, when they go to charge and there's a charging tax on there, could you add on a per mile tax if they're not in the RUC? And that would, so you enroll in the RUC if you wanna pay it directly, otherwise you're gonna get paid a per mile charge. Cause
Unless
it'll
you
read
charge
your
it.
odometer.
Unless you charge at home.
Well, if you charge at home, then fine. But then when you go to charge at a charging station, eventually, I guess if you never charge at a charging station, some people will do that.
Yeah.
But I would think a majority of people at some point go to a charging station.
Infrequent.
Is it infrequent?
Very
I
infrequent.
don't know.
I travel with my car two to three, maybe 4 weeks a year. So that means out of 52 weeks in the year, that I'm not accessible to be charged by state transportation.
Well, and so in theory, for someone like that, if you're in the RUC, you'd be fine, and that would be an incentive to join. And if you're someone that chooses not to participate in a road usage program, then you'd add on a per mile charge that would hit pretty big when you go to charge.
You're
I don't
saying
know.
an additional charging tax.
Yeah, essentially a higher charging tax if you're not in a RUC, and then a discount on the charging tax if you are.
How are you gonna know? You just drive into, like the Riverside, it's got multiple charging stations. You just plug it in, I believe there's you put in your plastic to pay for it, but they don't, how are they supposed to know who you are?
Well, I don't know, cause how do we charge the charging tax right now? We obviously.
In addition to the fee, if you're paying $1 a gallon, you charge 35 cents more on top of that for one level, and that's what the tax is. And the challenge with the charging stations now is because of how they're spread, cut across, they don't build the same way. Thought with it.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, charging stations in Salt Lake, are quite a bit lower than a charging station in Snowville.
Same thing here.
Half the cost.
I would assume they collect your, again, I don't own an EV, so I don't know, but I would assume the charging station has the ability to collect your, VIN number
No.
when you plug in. Is
Just
there
your
no
credit-
data transfer?
Just
The
your
only
credit card.
place
Okay.
that happens
Just your
with
credit
Tesla,
card.
because when I plug my Tesla into Tesla charging station, say, okay, this is Jim, here's this, we got to count for him
And maybe that's why I'm aware of that, so I was assuming all charging stations work
No,
that way. It sounds like they don't.
There's 22 different companies, I swear, just in this valley alone, that are doing that. And there's a whole population that don't charge anything. One of the only things you can get cheap in Sun Valley is your car charge. They have what are called destination charges there, and those are free. That is the only thing that's free, so about.
Interesting.
Hey,
When you and I met this afternoon, we talked a lot about misconceptions about road usage charging. And I was just wondering if before Utah initially launched this, if there was any sort of any sort of a public education campaign or anything to kind of educate the public about what it is and what it wasn't, back in the early 2000s?
Yeah, they did
when we were starting it?
so 2019, they did like a media blitz where they billboards, they did ads, they sent flyers to current EV owners, just try to educate, because even 2019 is fairly new to anybody. I'll say, when so I was a project manager for UDOT, before this, position. And my supervisor came to me and said, hey, there's a position open in Salt Lake, it's for a program manager for the RUP program. I said, and this is in 2021, I said, what's the RUP program? And he goes, well, I don't know. So he looked it up, and that's when I found out the road usage charge, because I mean, I had so many projects on my hand, my right hand was never talking to my left hand, so I was just worried about the projects I was managing, didn't worry about what the rest of UDOT was doing. But here we had our own little RUP program I knew nothing about until 2021. But they did do a media blitz where they tried to reach out through billboards, ads, and just flyers for the owners.
Sort of on that, just the precursor, when you were showing the timeline earlier, there was like 12 years of not too much had happened, and then bing, bang, boom, all of a sudden, a lot had happened. Do you know what happened at the State House to get the state to finally be comfortable to move forward? Was it like a grassroots effort, prominent business folk, any specific group get the state's ear?
I think the biggest factor at the time was the planners or the people in state finance looked at the decline in fuel taxes and thought, man, we've got to do something. They thought about it, 15 years ago, 12 years ago. They thought, we've got to do something because it's just getting worse. And so to make up that decline, that's when they really got put pen to paper and enacted legislation and started our program.
So it was more of an internal initiative that you then had to sell to the public rather than a public initiative.
Right.
That they convinced the state to.
Yeah, the public, like the gentleman I mentioned who didn't pay for anything prior to 2018, he was pretty happy to have an EV. They didn't pay anything else for, so, yeah, definitely came from the government down. I appreciate your time, again. I loved recreating in Idaho, loved golfing here. Backpacking in Sawtooth a few years ago, that was a great experience.
Yeah, I figured the RUC program had to do with backpack,
Yeah, no, I just love backpacking, so.
You've been all for that.
Thank you for your time, appreciate it.